Warning: this episode contains detail about suicide, more specifically child suicide, that may be upsetting or triggering to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, we've been expecting you. I'm Brianna, and welcome to Beyond the Bazaar's 13 Nights of Frights. From October 19th through October 31st, Halloween night, we will be sharing with you some of our favorite hand-picked urban legends, lore, stories, and more that we love to talk about during this special time of year. So take a seat, make yourself comfortable for these 13 nights of terror. Hello everyone, happy Wednesday. Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bazaar. I'm Brianna, your host, and thank you guys for joining me for yet another night for our 13 Nights of Fright special leading up to Halloween night. So yesterday we spoke about the songs and nursery rhymes that we sang as children that had dark undertones of important events in history. As I had mentioned last episode, it probably wasn't the most creepy or scary episode that we've done, but we're wanting to get more into things that may not necessarily be scary, but just interesting and bizarre or unusual in itself, because we want to focus on everything within that realm. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that. Tonight we are going to lean a little bit darker into a topic that I thought was really, really interesting when I found it out. So tonight's episode, we're going to talk about Lavender Town syndrome. So Lavender Town syndrome, it's connected to a video game that emerged back in 1990s. Before getting into that, when I first started researching it, the first thing I thought was interesting about it is the fact that it's a video game. And it never really crossed my mind that video games could cause negative things to happen or have negative impact. Because in my mind, the only game that I know, other than the many rituals that we've shared, that can cause things like that to happen is the Ouija board. And personally, I've never played with the Ouija board. I don't plan on doing so for the simple fact that I know people who have, and let's just say good things did not happen. And I've read about people who have, and good things did not happen. But one day I may share with you guys some interesting things that I found on it, on Ouija boards. But as far as negative things happening around games, that's the only game that came to mind. Another, not so much as game, but a gaming object, I should say, was the Magic 8 Ball. Now, I don't know if they still make Magic 8 Balls nowadays, but the Magic 8 Ball back when I was a kid was just that. It was a large Magic 8 pool ball, and you're supposed to ask a question, shake it, and then the answer would appear in the Magic 8 Ball. So, of course, my friends and I, we all had one. We would all just sit around and ask stupid questions. Who am I going to marry, or am I going to get married, or is this going to happen, or does this person like me? You know, just simple adolescent kid questions. And I remember when I was showing my grandma, I didn't like it. She's like, you shouldn't ask questions, like that. You shouldn't dabble into things. My grandma just thought it was just dark. So, but I really, really liked having a Magic 8 Ball, because I guess it just kind of went into all the things that I liked, and it's just the essence of kind of, I guess, manifesting, because, like, you ask it a question, you're like, okay, am I going to get an A on the test, or, is this going to happen, is that going to happen? And then when, just by a case of coincidence or chance, a thing ended up coming to fruition, it's just like, oh, this is real, this is real. So you kind of build up a belief in that. And I think that's kind of why, in hindsight, I think that's why my grandma didn't like it, because she didn't really like faith being put in things outside of religion. We shouldn't dabble into things. She thought it was just like dark magic or whatnot. To me, it was just a play thing, that was cool and predicted things, or would give you answers. But sorry to get all reminiscent. So back to tonight's topic. As I said, it's Lavender Town syndrome. So the Lavender Town syndrome emerged from a creepypasta that hit the internet around 2010. So this so-called Lavender Town syndrome refers to the peak in suicides of children between the ages of 7 and 12, shortly after the release of Pokemon Red and Green in Japan back in February of 1996. So per the Lavender Town syndrome urban legend, the suicides occurred shortly after the children that were playing the game reached Lavender Town, which is a level within the Pokemon Red and Green. The theme music for the Lavender Town level, had extremely high frequencies that only children and young tweens could hear, as their ears are more sensitive than adults' ears. So per the lore, it is rumored that at least 200 children committed suicide, usually by hanging or jumping. And the ones who did not take their own lives developed mental illnesses. Now, there were a select handfuls that weren't inflicted severely, but they still complained of having busting headaches after listening to the Lavender Town theme. Other children experienced nosebleeds or had fits of emotional instability or anger. So this led to the programmers of the game pulling it from the shelves and lowering the frequency on the level so that children would no longer be affected by it. So shortly after the large amount of suicides that was occurring in children that were all playing the game, they decided to do a recall on the game, I'm assuming, and tweaked it to where the frequency wouldn't be so high. But when I first came across this, I remember thinking that that's something that they probably didn't take into account, that, hey, that this could affect children, because it's known that frequencies in music can affect emotions. That's why sometimes certain music you listen to can make you feel sad, make you feel happy, make you feel angry. There's been cases where songs have even made people harm themselves or harm others, or I should say have been the cause of blame to make them hurt themselves or hurt others or just do certain things. And it makes sense for it to affect children because the programmers that put the game together are most likely adults, so they would have been immune to the frequency by that time. But I couldn't imagine being a programmer on that game and realizing that the game could have been a reason why all these children essentially had lost their minds and had their brains affected by just something that was supposed to bring them joy. So for the ones who didn't take their own life, they did have develop mental illnesses that they had to get treated for. And it's a lot. You would think, just playing a random game that things like that wouldn't happen. It just kind of, opens your mind to think, the games that you play that may be innocent, they may actually have some type of bearing or consequence. It's kind of like how nowadays, older people like to blame violence on violent video games and blame crimes on video games that surround crime. And at first I was like, well, that's ridiculous, but reading things like this kind of opens your mind to think maybe there is some type of correlation, maybe seeing these things or having these things seem like it's normalized can kind of have a negative bearing in some degree. Now, I did go through and like try my mind palace and tried to think, if I ever owned that Pokemon Red and Green game. I do know at one point I did own a Pokemon game. I just don't think it was that one. But it just does make you wonder, like, games you could have played, that you were when we were young, did they affect our emotions? If any of you guys recall ever playing like any games or feeling a certain way, let us know. But I've I can't recall like ever feeling a certain type of way after I'm playing any type of particular game, other than just being happy that I played it. But the Lavender Town syndrome creepypasta or urban legend is probably one of the most interesting that I've seen in terms of just different types of urban legends and lore. Like I said, we want to share more from around the world, different places, not just in our home country of the United States. We do want to explore more. We plan on definitely exploring more in the future. So I'm happy that I was able to share with you guys a little bit about Lavender Town syndrome, and just to have something that's interesting like that, and just something that you wouldn't necessarily think of that would just go on, just go disregarded. I don't want to say disregarded, but just not on the forefront of our minds. Just like I'm sure it wasn't on the forefront of the minds of the programmers that created the game, that made the music. It's just something that no one really thinks about, and sometimes the things that no one really thinks about can sometimes make all the difference, as is proven in the Lavender Town syndrome. And another thing with Lavender Town that actually just hit is that maybe not only the music, well, the frequency of the music may not only be the key contributing factor to the tragedy of the suicides, considering that Lavender Town is the place where the Pokemon are buried. Combined with the frequency of music, it just creates an environment for sadness. So it's just a lot I feel around it, and I know that from doing some research, it's been debunked into just being high frequency of music, creates a disturbance in the brain and causes mental illness and things like that. But of course, with us here Beyond the Bizarre, we kind of think maybe there's some type of other cause, maybe that's not so easily proven, something not of this world. But like I said, with video games, it's not something that you really think about that happening with. You think about it more so with Ouija boards and other type of games, that seances, things of that nature. And before I conclude tonight's episode, speaking of seances, now, to be fair, I didn't stay for the whole thing, but I guess I can share this with you guys since I'm thinking about it, and I actually haven't thought about it in a while. So back when I was in high school, a group of girls I was acquaintances with, I wouldn't quite say friends, but we hung out during gym, and they decided that they wanted to have a seance in the bathroom. Well, I'm looking at them like side eye emoji. You guys know what that looks like. That's how I'm looking at them. And they pull out a brush of one of their friends who just recently passed. I'm I wish you guys could have been there, but I'm looking at them like, okay, you guys are on some other mess. I'm not gonna stay here. I mean, I stayed there for a little bit. Once they started, doing all the stuff and started calling forth all the powers of darkness. So, I'm gonna leave. I'm gonna stay out. I'm gonna keep watch. And they said, just keep watch. Make sure no one comes in. Make sure the coaches don't come in. And that's what I just sat there, and was just walking, making sure that no one came in the bathroom. And next thing you know, like around couple of minutes, I'm going to say like 3 or 4 minutes pass, and you just hear this ear splitting screams coming from the bathroom. So I'm looking at the door. no, I'm not going in, but I'm looking at the door. And the coach goes running to the bathroom and opens the door, and like all the girls come running out, and they're pale, like pale hair wet, just soaked with sweat. I guess they were crying. Like I don't understand how their faces were like. It's just still like vividly in my memory till today. But they were just sweating, so the door wouldn't open. They couldn't get the door open. And one of the coaches ran up to me and asked me what happened. They said, "You were in there. We saw you come out." They said, "What happened?" Because the girls were just inconsolable. They could not speak, could not tell them what was going on. They were just crying, and actually had to get sent to the nurse, I guess, because they were just so frightened. And I told them the truth. I said they were trying to conjure up some spirits. They were trying to have a seance, and the nurse just, not the nurse, the coach just threw her eyes in the back of her head and just walked away. I was like, well, that's what they were doing, and I heard the nurse talking about. Well, I keep saying nurse. I heard the coach saying something about drugs or whatnot. I don't know, but I guess because the way they were acting, so you would probably think that they were on something, but I don't think that was the case. So around the next day, because I was actually neighbors with one of the girls who had done it. I walked her. I said, "Well, what happened? What did you guys experience?" And she told me what they had experienced. That the lights just went off, and they had saw something in the reflection in the mirror. And they said that the lights were off, and they couldn't get the door open. And they said it was just really, really, really frightening. And then even after that, like the girl who kind of led the seance, she said she started having issues just with her home life, and like her and her parents just started having in and out. She started just seeing weird things. So I think at that time she probably opened herself up to, or even probably opened up her other friends to something that shouldn't have been in anyone's life. So in hindsight, I'm actually glad I didn't stay around. I'm actually glad that I love talking about these things and love sharing them with you, but personally I don't dabble into them myself, just for some fact I just, it's all fun and games, so something follows you home. That's what I always say. But before I go on a tangent, because I can share a lot of stories with you guys, and I hope to be able to share more with you guys as we continue this great journey here beyond the bizarre. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and conclude tonight's episode. But don't forget, this is our 13 Nights of Frights, so we will be back again tomorrow with a new episode, which actually a ritual for you guys. We know how you guys love rituals, so we love sharing them with you. So the ritual we're going to share tomorrow includes an insect and a dead body. You don't want to miss it. So see you guys tomorrow. Until then, as always, stay bizarre.